today about conceptual planning with a conceptual, hopefully our students in mind, and teaching them to think well, to use their minds well. And one way of doing that is teaching them to be conceptual thinkers, and how we can approach that from a planning perspective. And so that's what I'm looking at today. And I just wanted to start off with a bit of something that I learned last year which completely fascinated me. Did you know? Nowhere in nature do perfectly straight lines exist. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, no, nowhere in nature do perfectly straight lines or perfect geometric shapes exist. When I heard that, it completely fascinated me, and I had that incredible wow moment of revelation, and so I wanted to know more. And I looked into the concept of fractals. Fractals are infinitely... sorry, am I in the way here? Can people see?
You just keep moving around as you are.
Sorry. Infinitely complex patterns that, in the most unpredictable and organic, natural ways, grow and develop and change, but they are self-similar across scale. So, for example, a snowflake, which is why I chose this little thing, is an example of a fractal. Magnifying a fractal, which I'll show you in a moment, magnifying a fractal reveals small scale details similar to the large scale image. That's a bit confusing. But down the bottom it probably explains it better. Fractals exhibit incredible new patterns formed of the old ones in the most organic and harmonious yet unpredictable ways. And these are some examples. Bubbles, for example, a snowflake, which actually could start as like a triangle and then another triangle and then more triangles, and each little element, no two snowflakes are the same, and each little element is a small version of the big one. Coastlines. As you zoom in on coastlines, you still get this same sort of fractal image. Tree canopies, some leaves, or like that one there. Weather patterns as well are fractals. And the Mandelbrot set, just stick with me, I will go somewhere with it. The Mandelbrot set was the first fractal conceived by a man named, I think, Benoit, B-E-N-O-I-T, any mathematicians want to correct me, Benoit Mandelbrot, who, I'll just turn this down, sorry. Benoit Mandelbrot, who was a mathematician and one of the first people to use computer graphics to create and display fractal images, which led to the discovery of the Mandelbrot set in 1979. And what that is it's a mathematical process using particular complex numbers, and by graphing the ones that are part of this Mandelbrot set on a complex number plane, as thousands of these points are plotted, you get these incredible images, and colour has been added. But as it zooms in, they are self-similar of the original one. And yet it's this most organic and unpredictable and natural of processes, which is, I think, what I found most beautiful. So, and what I think is also really cool is the Mandelbrot set, its beautiful capacity to unpredictably produce that unfathomable, got it referred to as the thumbprint of God. I think that's really beautiful. So understanding this concept of fractals for me blew my mind, and then transferred to so many different areas of my life, and it fits into part of complex or chaos theory and finding beauty in chaos, finding order in chaos. But it transferred to many areas of my life, including work and school, and it reminded me that school and learning are ways of life. They are natural processes, and they need to be. Schools are complex systems, and they are comprised of so many individual organic systems, us, people, students, and that's really important because it is those organic systems who interact in very unpredictable but also fascinating ways. And yesterday was testament to that, and the day before, where there was quite a lot of uncertainty in what would happen probably in all of the last 2 days, but there were these self-similar tables of people who would move around and interact, and out of all of these interactions came fascinating new ideas, and out of this chaos, well, it probably wasn't chaos, but out of real complex situation came complete clarity and some beautiful, beautiful ideas, coherent ideas too. So learning is our core business. Learning is what we are about. And in itself is also a very complex system. It's living and it's changing all the time. And what I want to talk about is the idea that learning can't really just be about, and I'm sure we all know this already, it can't be reduced to a list of topics or facts that we want our students to leave school knowing. Yeah? Our business is about growing students, growing them into the best that they can be. And so as I talk for the next few minutes, I just want you to keep this image in your mind and consider our context, the school, Good Shepherd Lutheran College, and the people who we are constantly interacting with as an organic, living, changing, beautifully complex process. So that's what I just want you to keep in the back of your minds. I just want you to listen to Lynn. I can't quite get this to play the right sound on here, so I'm just going to flip to that one and turn that up. Well, that the ability to think well is so important. Where do I go? Sorry, Laura.
It's all right.
Is that right?
Yeah, then just present at the top. Should be fine.
Present and should be right.
Yeah.
Back sort of on track. That one just didn't work. There we go. We won't try this again. Lynn Erickson is an incredible guru of the IB, it's probably fair to say. She's retired now.
She retired last year.
But
yeah.
probably will still do some consultancy work, I'm sure. And a lot of what she has produced has been used and adopted by the IB. And her big thing is about conceptual development and concepts. And she argues that perhaps that is the key to teaching our students who are going to be entering worlds that are incredibly different from what we entered and what we could even expect that they will enter, and so they can use their minds well and to think well. And so this is nothing new for us, I'm sure, but the big thing is that concepts transfer. Topics don't necessarily. Concepts transfer. They are the big ideas, the general abstract ideas that are not wishy-washy and vague, but that are supported by our facts and our content and our topics, and that is still incredibly important. I'll talk about that in a moment. But they are timeless, which is important, because in 50 years we'll still be talking about what it means to grow, what it means to change, what oppression is, what prejudice is, what metaphor. These concepts are always going to exist. They don't necessarily change. They are abstract enough that they can also be complex. I think all of us are developing conceptually, continuously. That's when you get those beautiful aha moments of revelation. I think that's usually when you've got, when you've made some conceptual development. Well, at least for me, that is what happens. They are universal, which is really important in a very increasingly global and flat world where everyone can access everyone via technology. They are universal. And concepts personally and intellectually engaged. So when I found out that nowhere in nature do straight lines exist, that fascinated me. When I found out that fractals exist and what they are and their beauty and their aesthetics and how completely complex but yet so clear, how that changed me, and that helped me to transfer my understandings to many new and different contexts. So when we think beyond the facts and connect our factual knowledge of to ideas of conceptual significance, they become relevant and find deeper, personal meaning, and that's by Lynn Erickson. This one. It's just a nice little thing I found about enduring understandings. Concepts spark inquiry because they spark questions. They want us to, they make us ask questions because we have to, because we don't just understand them like we might have fact. And so by sparking inquiry, we do get these beautiful, enduring understandings and hopefully sow some seeds in our students. Now, I do need to make a fairly big disclaimer here because it is really important that you understand. I don't want you to think I'm saying that content is not important. It is so important, and it is what we are passionate about. It's what our seniors often in our classes are incredibly passionate about because they're choosing our classes. Content is important, but so are concepts, because we want students who can critically think, who can reflectively think, who can conceptually think. Yeah. Many of us might have seen this next little diagram or paradigm with Laura. It's called the theory of knowledge, or the structure of knowledge, or the theory of structure of knowledge. It's by Lynn Erickson. She developed it, and she based it. It's based upon this three-dimensional curriculum model, which the IB also bases a lot of their planning on. And this includes concepts and generalizations, which show how the concepts connect, that transfer to allow the brain to make connections and see patterns. This model is about developing in our students the intellect to handle a world of increasing complexity and accelerating change, just like Lynn said. It's idea-centered, rigorous and intellectually engaging by design, and fosters collaboration, social learning and meaning-making. So the structure of knowledge is a way of organising that Lynn came up with into a framework that we can use in our planning, but also in our classrooms with our students. And I know Laura used this quite a bit last year with her students, to breaking it down so that they can understand that this is really important, and this is the foundation or supports. I like the idea of this as our case studies for learning and understanding and making connections between our concepts. And this generalisation, I love the words that I found here, if I can find, which I think I'm right in, is often our statement of inquiry, is essentially our statement of these conceptual relationships. So super important, always has been, what we love doing, what we often revert to doing, but also really key, this area here. And that's what I want to look at. So I just wanted to really show you an example. It's definitely not perfect. Ours in the next 2 days will be way more fantastic because we're doing them collaboratively, which collaboration I think is the stuff of growth more than me doing it on my own. But I want to share a unit that I did with a Year 10 class I had last year. So I came back to school after 2 years of leave, and I had walked into my Year 10 class, 18 students, beautiful class size, 16 boys, 2 girls, and a lot of the boys I had taught when I had them in Year 7 and 8, so now they were in Year 10. And I noticed very quickly that their sense of humour hadn't really changed, that they still had a very wicked sense of humour and were completely enamoured with creating situations where they could laugh at each other, you know. And so I quickly rethought my plans and thought, wow, that's not going to work. Went away and wrote this unit because I had this idea of, okay, humour, let's look at humour, and then there's the beautiful German word Schadenfreude, which means taking pleasure in the misfortune of others. And I thought, well, maybe I can engage them with this. And so humour is in itself a concept, but perhaps it's more of a micro concept with particular disciplines. It fits into these huge big concepts. I'll let you just have a look, I don't need to read them. But the ones that are a bit bigger are ones that we touched on or were central to the unit that we did as a class. So connections, human nature, stereotypes, empathy was a big one that we looked at. But there are so many others. And the idea with this is that concepts, as we know, transfer. So I think concepts are key to developing interdisciplinary units because we can access through the concepts from so many different disciplines. This is every single, I'm sure, learning area could touch on some of these. And concepts spark inquiry. So I just came up with questions. Yours could be much better. I think we're having a session on questions, so don't judge mine. But again, could be accessed by many, many different disciplines. Why does humour connect people? Or how does it? Why does humour require empathy? What would happen if our world lost its humour, or lost all humour? And so this formed part of our hook for my class. Laura actually got me this in a beautiful museum in Germany. It's called an ABC der Schadenfreude, an ABC of the Schadenfreude, which, as it says there, means taking pleasure in the pain of others. And so this formed part of our hook, but I thought I'd just give it to you as a brain break. It doesn't appeal to everyone. I think Lydia called it black or coffin humour, is that right? I should read it so that we can see it. A or A. Alle Kinder lieben Piranhas, außer Annegret, die im Becken steht. So all children love piranhas except Annegret, who's standing in the pool. And B, some of them are quite gruesome, but I didn't show you those ones. Alle Kinder springen ins Wasser, außer Berta, die landet härter. All the children jump into the water, except Berta, who jumps over it and lands harder. So we use this as our bit of our hook, and I wanted to show you the unit. And we actually then went and looked at the entire book in different groups later on in the unit. So this I've done post. I didn't do this when I taught the unit, but I will from now on because I think it is helpful for the kids, certainly helpful for me, in making sure I revisit this as often as I can and that the students conceptually develop. Really important, lots that we did facts-wise. And I've tried to, these are on your tables if you want to have a look at them. Tried to take out all the German because that's not really helpful. But this one here, humour uses language, rules exist to help communicate intent and manipulate audience responses. So we still did language constantly. All of our sources that we used to study, our case studies, were in language. All of the sentences, as I wanted them to learn particular grammatic structures, were in German, and I'd give them sentences and say, lustig oder nicht, funny or not, why? Why is it funny that, the girl runs into the clean glass door? Everyone laughs at that. But why is it not funny that as somebody's coming down at parachuting, skydiving, their parachute doesn't pull? So we looked, and this was all in German. So that the integrity of my subject I still felt was there, and that's important. We don't want to lose that. And these topics, we looked at Schadenfreude, so we looked at cultural humour. We looked at stereotypes, at history and how historic events in Germany, particularly World War II, and Berlin Wall, how history shaped perceptions of German humour. And that was really powerful because we also had our German students there at the same time, so that was really interesting. We looked at human nature, and that in itself I think is a concept. Stand-up comedy formed part of their tasks, summative tasks, and we looked at then human and social media, which was a complete diversion, something that I hadn't planned for, but that the kids sort of took with. So our concepts were connections and empathy. These are like the macro concepts that I got from our guide, but then many other concepts we dealt with: human nature, perception, stereotypes, which were pretty subject specific. And my statement of inquiry, good or probably not, humour connects people by drawing out the best and worst in them. And we tried to come back to that as often as we could. So this is also on your table. I'm sorry, part of it was cut off, and this is the last bit I want to share. So one of the summative tasks is taken off. I promised to do assessment in it. But this was just my circular planner. So as I said, we had this tune-in task just to kind of hook the students as much as I could. You can't really see it, I'm sorry. And we still conjugated verbs, like we looked at the verb auflachen, burst out laughing, and constantly would write sentences on the board. What I failed to say also is this class was a phase 1 class, which probably in year 10, not any of them wanted to be learning German. So that's probably the nice way to say it. So we just still tried to have as much German in there as we could, but the level of skills in using the language themselves wasn't really all that high. So a lot of it was me giving them sentences and us interrogating them together. So we did this and we looked at the statement of inquiry, used Padlets and all that stuff. The unit's on EndDrive. I'm not going to go through it in detail. You can look at it yourselves. But we did the finding out. We looked at this cultural stereotypes and perceptions of different cultures. Why is there the perception that perhaps Germans aren't funny? Where does that come from? And we looked down here really into into these historical events. And again, we used a play called Sternenhimmel, which is about the coming down of the Berlin Wall, and that was in German, and our exchange students sort of did it for us, acted it out. So we still did lots and lots of German language. We came down here and we looked at, that's where we really sort of used this, and we went through and did all of that, and students responded in different ways, and we did that very much together in groups, these artist impressions, and looked at to what extent is humour human nature, and is human nature the distinguishing connecting factor in our statement of inquiry. Human connects people by drawing out the best and most of them. Then they came into their sort of work, and so this was very content rich. This was less so. We did examples together, but students had watched three stand-up comedians, but some were groups. And one of them was in English with some German, the other two were in German, and they had to write a review in German. That was their summative task. So how do you connect with these stand-up comedians? In what ways does the humour appeal to your or to our human nature? So again, just trying to draw out from this so that there is this conceptual understanding that is hopefully lasting for them and that they can make meaning for in other aspects of their life or in the future. And I think if I could do this again, I'd do what Steve said yesterday and give students a statement of inquiry or even my questions, which you've got in front of you, and then get them to write provocative questions, because I think that's a really powerful way of seeing where they want to take it. We then went and looked at empathy. Does humour require empathy, and why? How is empathy involved in building connections with others? Why do you laugh at something? Are you laughing at it or are you laughing with that person? And that was really big for us. And we did this is where it then took a real detour, because we just did a reading, another summative task, but the kids loved these memes, yeah? And so, like this one says, Ich kaufte dich einen Milchshake. I bought you a milkshake. Leider habe ich es nicht. Unfortunately, I don't have it because she's run into a glass door. And like it really appealed to most of their sense of humour. And so then we took a detour and they wrote their own memes, and then we questioned social media and does social media bring out the best or worst in us? How does that connect us, and so on. So this is where we sort of took it. And I think it's really important. Sorry, I'll just find where I'm up to. I think it's really important that once a conceptual inquiry is set up, so once we have this and we've got this, that we are willing to let the inquiry that it sparks in our kids lead the unit a bit, that it doesn't have to be completely, we're going to go here, 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 here. And that's what that image of fractals really told me, that out of completely unpredictable things that comes beauty. The students will take it, if you let them, to places that probably have greater clarity and greater understanding that you could ever plan for, or I could ever plan for myself. And I think, just like nature, it's such an organic process, and I think we must remember that, because we're dealing with students who are not all the same. They are living and they're natural, and and I think that's really important. It's complicated, it's complex, but it's beautiful. So concept, I think, just cannot be a throwaway word. It can't be a word that we look at today in our unit plan, in our subject guides, and we write down on our planners, and then we don't think about it again. It's not a word just for us. It's a word for our kids, and it's not confined only to our unit planners. Conceptual development is key to teaching our students to use their minds well, which is what Lynn Erickson was saying. Concepts, when authentically woven into our teaching, engage emotions, they create meaningful questions, and spark inquiry, which can take us anywhere. And yeah, the case studies and the facts and the content are important in forming the case studies that we use to develop the conceptual understandings with our students. So please take the time today and tomorrow to develop the concepts for your units. They form that umbrella or part of the roof, which allows for transfer to new contexts and help students to use their minds well. Preparing conceptual units requires time, and we have that today, and we've got it in teams, which is going to produce so much better stuff than what I've shown you, and I think that's exciting. So enjoy the conversations about the concepts. Try not to just gloss over them. Enjoy them, and enjoy the aha moments that you get of revelation, because as I said, we still are all developing conceptually ourselves. And look at today, as I did of the past 2 days, as this beautiful fractal. This is a weather pattern. Self-similar in our teams, moving between teams even, but a genuine, complex, organic system, and that's exciting. And when maybe you see some of those little images in nature, just remember the beauty and the clarity that can come from complexity and at times chaos. Thank you.